On today's show, the Cavs clinch home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs with their win over Memphis. It wasn't always pretty, but I don't know that you want to read too much into what happened. We'll discuss why on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi again, everybody. My name is Danny Cunningham, and I cover the Cleveland Cavaliers over at my Substack, The Inside Shot, and you're listening to another edition of Locked On Cavs. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. On today's show, we will be talking about why the Cavs reaching the 50-win mark in a season that hasn't gone the way anybody planned it would is an important accomplishment for this team. We will talk about some of the contributions from some of the lesser used role players in this game against the Memphis Grizzlies. But we begin with the Cavs getting a 142-126 victory over the Memphis Grizzlies in a very, very strange game. This is one that you look at this box score and you're like, nothing says April NBA basketball prior to the playoffs beginning in a game that truthfully does not matter a whole ton more than this type of box score. So the Memphis Grizzlies tie an NBA record with 29 made three-pointers. Now, some of this was certainly because the Cavs were not good enough defending the three-point arc, but I don't know that it's just worth really digging into that, because look at some of the lineups that the Cavs are throwing out there. Were they good enough defensively? Absolutely not. But if they're running out some of these lineups that they had, and, I did not think they played very hard for the first quarter and change of this game. And then I thought that there was a lineup that had Naquan Tomlin, had Tristan Enaruna, had some of the deeper reserves. Those guys were playing hard, and I thought that flipped the script for the Cavs, and that's why they were able to put together what was ultimately a really solid final 2.5 quarters. Like, I did think that they played well the back half of the second quarter, all of the third quarter, most of the fourth quarter before the game kind of became a joke. So I do think there are good things to take away from this. But I look at some of the lineups the Cavs are putting out there, and I understand that the initial reaction is going to be the Cavs cannot defend the three-point arc, right? We saw it happen against the Pacers where Indiana hit 7 threes in the first few minutes of that game on Sunday. We've seen it time and time again where the Cavs just get destroyed from beyond the arc, and that's all well and fair. I don't think that has much to do with anything that happened on Monday night, because look who's available for the Cavs in this game. No Donovan Mitchell, no James Harden. And I realize those two, not great defensive players, right? Like, you're not counting on Donovan and James to go out there and be the reason why the Cavs are able to suddenly in the playoffs flip some script and become a good team defending the three-point arc. You're not asking them to do that. Jalen Tyson, you kind of are. Dean Wade, you certainly are. Max Strus, you are. Like, those three not being out there is certainly important to this. And it's not as if the Cavs have been some great defensive team when they've had everybody available, or I guess most of their guys available, because they have not had everybody available for a single game. But I don't think that if you watch this game, if you watch some of the lineups that were out there together, and Cavs started their 39th different starting lineup of the season on Monday night against Memphis. If the Cavs are in a postseason situation where they have to play lineups like they played on Monday night, not to say that some of these players cannot be impactful in the postseason, because I thought what Dennis Schroder did is something that can be applicable to the postseason, just not in as large of a sample size. Thought what Keon Ellis did can be applicable to the postseason, just not in as big of a sample size. Thought that some of that stuff, like Naquan Tomlin bringing energy, if the Cavs need it for 3 minutes, can he be a guy that does that? I think he might be able to. But they're not going to have all those guys playing together. And that's why it's hard for me to read too much into the Grizzlies hitting 29 threes. And I think at a certain point, it stops mattering what the defense looks like. When, as a group, and we've seen the Cavs, not necessarily this team in particular, but we saw this a bunch last year. And historically, like, if you've been a Cavs fan for more than a decade, you have seen the Cavs have nights like this one. Maybe not quite 29 threes, because three-pointers when the second LeBron era, three-pointers were not as prevalent as they are right now. Teams did not shoot them at the frequency that they do now. So I think that, you kind of have to adjust a little bit. But we saw the Cavs have so many nights like this to where at some point it stops mattering what teams are doing defensively. Just when you've got it going on, you've got it going on. And that's sort of what I think Memphis had, because the Grizzlies are 21st, or they enter the night 21st in 3-point percentage. They're not a good 3-point shooting team. They just had a great night. And, like Dariq Whitehead, who he was 4 of 17 on threes prior to this game, goes 6 of 12, right? Omax Prosper, 4 of 5. Lucas Williamson. Yeah, I mean, I am naming off people that if you're a Cavs fan, you have probably never heard of before. Those guys are just lighting it up from deep. Adama Ball, 6 of 11, right? Like at a certain point, it stops mattering what the defense looks like. And I'm not going to sit here and say that a lot of these or all of these were tightly contested. And I think that the Cavs did the thing that I think if you want to look at as the biggest problem here, but again, it's not apples to apples, because the guys at the start of the game, yes, Jarrett started this game. He played after not playing on Sunday. Evan Mobley started this game after not playing on Sunday. Like, those guys are going to be out there at the start of a playoff game. But Sam Merrill probably isn't. Keon Ellis probably isn't. Dennis Schroder probably isn't. And I think that what the Cavs have done in both when they've got the group out there that they would ideally have start and other groups is they have not started games with the proper force, and they allow teams to get comfortable early. And I do think if you want to say that there are gripes to be had with this, I think that's what it is. I think it's that they allowed the Memphis Grizzlies to feel comfortable and confident early in this game. And because of that, they were able to have confidence. They were able to catch a rhythm. And that's how you find yourself making 29 threes, because you don't do that without those things. And then at a certain point, again, the defense stops mattering. And I don't think that this was all just like the Cavs were bad, because that's not true. I thought that in the second quarter, like the back half of the second quarter, I thought the Cavs did some really, really good things. And again, I think it started with some of the deeper reserves. I thought the third quarter, for the most part, was a really, really good quarter for the Cavs. The fourth quarter kind of became a joke at the end. I mean, the Grizzlies were fouling the Cavs when they were down by like 12 in order to try and get the ball back so that they could try and set the NBA record for most threes made in a game as a team, because they finished tied at 29. So like, think back to if you watch Bam Adebayo's 83-point performance against the Washington Wizards, where the Heat were up big and they kept fouling so they could get the ball back, so they could try and get Bam more points, so they could get him past Kobe's 81. That's kind of what Memphis was doing here, trying to set this record. They weren't able to do it. But I don't think that we should read too much into this, because ultimately, if the Cavs are in a postseason situation and they have to look from a personnel standpoint the way they had to look against Memphis on Monday night, it doesn't matter. Like, they're not going to win. That's not a playoff advancing caliber type of team. It's not. They need Donovan Mitchell. They need James Harden. They need Dean Wade. They need Jalen Tyson. They need Max Strus. They need all of those guys in order to reach their full potential. For as good as Keon Ellis was in this game, and I thought he did some really good things. For as good as Dennis Schroder was in this game, and he did some really good things. Like, those guys can't be the star players. So that's why I just don't think that this is worth reading too much into. It wasn't a great performance defensively, certainly, but at this point in the season, I am at the point personally, and maybe you disagree with this, maybe you feel differently. I am done judging what this team does defensively, because I think it's very clear that no matter who's out there, we're not going to see this team be a great defense in the regular season. And we might not see them be a great defense in the postseason. We might see them be much better in the postseason. I don't know. I don't know what they're capable of doing defensively, because we've not seen it, partially because they have not been healthy. And at this point, I would bet against us seeing them at full strength in a single game this regular season. I would. And with that said, maybe they have it in the playoffs. We don't know. The team that we're going to watch when the Cavs play in the first round of the playoffs in just under 2 weeks is going to be a different one than the team we've watched all year. It's going to be a different team than what we watched all year. Now, I said that the Cavs, I didn't think played great for the first 16 minutes of this game. I thought effort was an issue. I thought that they looked like a team that didn't want to be in Memphis. And I'm not trying to make a joke when I say that. Like, they just looked like a team that didn't want to be there, that didn't have an interest in the game. And then I thought they turned that around. And I think they deserve credit for that. We could have a conversation about why that was the case. But when you're this deep into a season, I just kind of get it. And like, everything is at this point for the most part wrapped up. We will talk about the standings because there were some important things that happened elsewhere for the Cavaliers on Monday night that impacted their standings, potential playoff opponents, just stuff like that. So we will get to that. But I do think it's good that they were able to turn things around. I mentioned Evan Mobley played in this game after not playing on Sunday. I thought he played really well. I thought if there was maybe a little bit better guard play, like if James Harden plays in this game, and this is not to take away from Dennis Schroder because I thought Dennis played very, very well, and I want to talk about him in a second. But if James Harden plays in this game, I think Evan probably has 30 points. And he finished with 24, did it on 9 of 11 shooting. I'm obviously not in Memphis. I don't believe anyone traveled to Memphis for this game, so I didn't. And I listened back to what Kenny said after the game, and I don't know that it was asked that if Evan was on a minutes restriction, but he only played 25 minutes. Like that to me screams like he's on a minutes restriction. And I do think we're going to see Evan a couple more times this season because this was the 63rd game he's played. So he needs to play into the final 3 to hit that 65 game mark so he can be eligible for an all defense team because he's not going to win defensive player of the year. But is Evan Mobley going to be voted all defense? Probably. So I think that is something we are going to see over the final couple of games of the season, just because he needs to be eligible for awards voting. Again, he's not going to win defensive player of the year, but he belongs on an all defense team. So I do think that he probably is going to play in a couple more games, should play about 20 minutes. And we'll talk about what the Cavs strategy should be the rest of this week. But Jarrett Allen also played. I thought he looked okay. He had that awesome block at the rim, had an and one on the other end. Like he had these moments, but I don't know that he necessarily looked like Jarrett Allen in this game. He played 24 minutes, which is more than he played last time he played for the Cavs. So I do think like that's a step in the right direction, but I wonder if the Cavs would be best shutting Jarrett Allen down for the remainder of the regular season. They've got 3 games left. This is not a conversation right now about what they should do for seeding, but for Jarrett Allen's health, I do wonder if it makes sense to not have him play again until game 1 of the playoffs. Because he did not look like Jarrett Allen. And maybe part of it is, they don't have James Harden. They don't have Donovan Mitchell. And I get that. But I just wonder if he would be better off if they can get him 10 more days here of rest before the games actually matter. Because the Cavs have clinched a top 4 seed. They could get up to 3rd. We could have a debate whether or not they should want to get up to 3rd. They could potentially influence who they play in the first round. It could be Atlanta, it could be Toronto, maybe still Philly, though I think they're kind of on the outside looking in at this point. So I think that there are things that they could want to play for should they so choose to. But I think health needs to come first. And that's why I think it could make sense to shut Jarrett Allen down for the final 3 games of the regular season. Like he's not going to be on any awards team. The 65 game thing, I don't think matters at this point. Like health for the postseason when he's very clearly dealing with something, I think is what should matter most. I thought Keon Ellis was really good. I thought Dennis Schroder was really good. And what those guys did in this game is not something at the volume they did it that they can do in the postseason. But I think that the things they did can be done in the postseason. Like the role Dennis Schroder played, and I thought he did a great job getting downhill. And I know Memphis is bad. Like this is a bad basketball team the Cavs played on Monday night. So I understand that as I say this, but as I think to what Dennis looks like in a postseason situation for the Cavs, and I know he's not going to play 30 minutes, but can Dennis be the guy in 18 minutes in a playoff game against Atlanta or against Toronto or against Detroit or Boston or whomever? Can he be the guy that he was in 29 minutes on Monday? Can he do that in 18? Now, I know that doesn't mean 22 points. It doesn't mean 11 assists. But can he have like that prorated version of that game 2 or 3 times in the series? I think it's possible. And I think that this was the version of Dennis that we need to see from the Cavs. And I think the same thing goes for Keon. He played 27 minutes in this game. Now, there might be a playoff game here or there where he does play 27 minutes. I think his role is going to be a little bit more matchup based and I think kind of riding the hot hand type thing. But with Dennis, he's not going to play a ton because he should never be on the floor with both Donovan and James, where Keon just has more opportunity because he fits into more lineups. So I do think we could maybe see this type of game from Keon, but he had 19 points. He had 8 assists, was 7 of 11 from the floor, 3 of 5 from 3. And I think that if you watch this game, because I do think that Keon Ellis is in the future plans for the Cavs after this year. And I know that right now is not the time to have conversations about post this season, but I do think that this is the type of night that can make you wonder, what more can he be? What type of untapped potential does Keon Ellis have that the Cavs could maybe get out of him next year? I don't know that that's what we're going to see the rest of this year and in the postseason, but next year I wonder if we could see that. The other important thing before we get to some of the deeper reserves that I thought had a really good game, Sam Merrill had 18 points in the second half. He's not been playing well lately. I do wonder how much that hamstring injury is bothering him. I remember watching, I think it was the game in Chicago last month. Like, you could see him wincing, running up and down the floor. I think the hamstring is bothering him. I don't think the Cavs are giving him time off just to give him time off. So I do think that he's dealing with a legitimate injury right now. And I thought it was a really good thing to see him get going, to see him find a rhythm, because for the Cavs to get to where they want to go, Sam Merrill is a very, very important player for them to do so. Now, thought the game turned, as I said, with the play of some deeper reserves. Naquan Tomlin, Larry Nance Jr., Craig Porter Jr., they had 9 guys in double figures. We'll talk about that, plus where the Cavs are sitting in the standings next, right here on Locked On Cavs. But first, today's show is brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, your inbox probably overflowing, and the one position that you have to still fill sitting open. Well, when the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping that the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status that it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's right. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support this show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Once again, that is Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions do apply. Do you need to hire? Well, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Today's show is also brought to you by Wayfair. Wayday is here. And if you've been thinking about upgrading your space, this is the time to do it, because we're talking about some of the best deals of the year. Not of the week, not of the month, of the year on furniture, decor, outdoor essentials, all of it. Everything you need to refresh your phone or to refresh your home. During Wayday, Wayfair is offering up to 80% off with fast and free shipping on everything, making it easy to find pieces that fit your style and your budget. I've shopped on Wayfair before. The chair I'm sitting in right now, from Wayfair. The dresser in our bedroom, from Wayfair. The table in our living room, from Wayfair. The nightstand in our bedroom, from Wayfair. We got great deals. We got great products, and everything came as advertised, came quickly, was easy to assemble, and I could not be more satisfied with the entire upgrading process from Wayfair. So whether it's upgrading a room, adding outdoor pieces, or just finding something that ties your space together, Wayfair makes the whole process simple from start to finish. Wayday is the sale to shop the best deals in home. We're talking up to 80% off with fast and free shipping on everything. Head to wayfair.com April 25th through the 27th to shop Wayday. That's Wayfair, WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Thank you again for making this edition of Locked On Cavs your first watch on YouTube or your first listen anywhere you might get your podcast. And if that's you, well, you might want to check out the Locked On Cavs Everydayer Club. Get you ad-free versions of the show, plus a members-only Discord access as well. A link is in the show notes if you would like to learn more. I thought this game changed with the play of some of the deeper reserves, because the Cavs did not have the requisite energy early on in this game. I did not think they were playing all that hard. I thought they looked tired. They were on the second night of a back-to-back, but so was Memphis. And it's not as if Memphis played at home on Sunday night. They were in Milwaukee as well. So both teams were kind of dealing with a similar travel schedule. And, I just don't think that's an excuse in the least bit. But I understand why the Cavs were tired and didn't necessarily have energy. Like, this is a meaningless game for all intents and purposes in Memphis, Tennessee in April. You can see the light at the tunnel. The playoffs are on the horizon. So I get it. And that's why I think that some of the deeper reserves deserve a lot of credit here, because I thought Naquan Tomlin had the best game that he has played since he signed his standard contract back in February. I don't think he's been very good since then. And he's not been in the rotation, and he should not be in the rotation. But I thought he played like a rotation player. I thought he brought energy. I thought he did a lot of really, really good things. Had 10 points, had 9 rebounds. Was awesome. Had a couple of really nice finishes, like the 1-and-1 that he had, like the in and out into a Euro step. That was awesome. Hit a 3. He did a lot of really, really good things. And the Cavs shouldn't be in a position to where they need to count on Naquan Tomlin. But I think a night like this one, and I said this about Thomas Bryant on Sunday, but I think a night like this one is something that you can look at if you're Kenny Atkinson, if you're the Cavs, and say, okay, we can trust Naquan a little bit more than maybe we could have before this game. Craig Porter Jr. thought he was really good as well. Brad Doherty, I believe in the game, called him Little Wemby, which I didn't know that I heard right at first. And I went back and re-listened to it. And it's like, no, he said that. And the chase down block he had was awesome. I thought he was super impactful. I thought he did a lot of, and Craig is a player who is never going to have the box score that really stands out, right? Like he had 11 points, he had 8 boards, he had 6 assists. Like he did have 2 blocks, had 2 steals. None of those numbers are otherworldly, but he does everything. But he finds a way to make an impact in so many different areas. And that's why I think Craig Porter Jr. is a valuable player. I don't think that he's a playoff rotation player. I think he's on the outside looking in. And I don't think that's wrong. But I think if the Cavs need Craig Porter Jr., they can trust him. And I think that's an important thing. Thought Tyrese Proctor did not play well early. Thought he played much better in the second half. Did hit a couple shots, got to the line a bunch, had 10 points. The Cavs did have everybody other than Tristan Enaruna that played legitimate minutes in this game scored at least 10 points. They had 9 players in double figures, which I believe is the 3rd time has happened in franchise history. So that is a really cool thing to see the depth shine the way that it did on a night where they don't have James Harden, they don't have Donovan Mitchell, they don't have Max, they don't have Dean, they don't have Jalen. Like, to be able to see, and it's not guys 5 through 15 or 6 through 15, because Evan was playing, Jarrett was playing, but to see a lot of the guys that really are like 8 through 15, 7 through 15, step up and play the way they did, I think is a really good sign. Even Larry Nance Jr., I thought this was back-to-back really strong games from him. Thought he played pretty well against Indiana on Sunday. Thought he played pretty well again on Monday against Memphis. And I don't know how much the Cavs are going to need Larry. I don't know when they're going to need Larry. I don't know if they're going to need Larry. But I think that the play that he's had recently, and he's played well in some end-of-game situations too, has been much better than who he was earlier in the season. Now, how real is it? I don't know, because we've not seen it against real competition. Like even these last 2 games, the Pacers stink. The Grizzlies are terrible. So I don't know, again, sort of similar to the defense. Like, I don't know how much there's to read into it, but you would rather it, both with the defense, and this has not been the case, but with some of these deeper reserve guys, you'd rather it be good than bad. And with them, for the most part, it has been better. And I think that's a good thing. Now, as far as the standings go, we did get some clarity. Monday was a big day for clarity for the Cavs. So they beat Memphis, which gives them guaranteed home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs. And truthfully, that was clinched prior to the end of that game, because the New York Knicks went into Atlanta and they beat the Hawks. It was a wild game. It was a great game. I watched most of it while I had the Cavs game on. CJ McCollum hit a 65-foot shot that would have tied the game, but the ball was on his fingertips at the buzzer. Like, this was a remarkable game between 2 really good teams. And what that does, or what that did, I should say, is it clinched home court advantage in the first round for the Cavs, because now that loss for the Atlanta Hawks meant that the Hawks cannot, even if the Cavs were to lose out and the Hawks were to win out, the Hawks cannot catch the Cavs. They cannot get to 50 wins. They can't get to 49 wins at this point. So the Cavs are clear there. They can fall no further than 4th. What that win also did for New York is it kept that 1-game cushion between the Cavs and the Knicks in the standings. And I know that the fan base is relatively divided on whether or not the Cavs should try and play for third or if they should try and play for fourth. And I think there's a third scenario where they just rest certain guys and whatever happens, happens. You're not tanking games, but you are taking care of health because this is a team that is relatively beat up right now. And that is an important thing to denote here. But there is this fourth scenario that I need to flesh out a little bit more, and I will talk about this on tomorrow's show. But because of who the Cavs play this week, they play Atlanta the next two games. They play in Cleveland on Wednesday, and they play in Atlanta on Friday. And this can be that we'll have more clarity on Tuesday because Toronto plays Miami, but Atlanta's loss drops them to within, they have a game and a half lead over the Raptors. They have played one more game than the Raptors. They have a 1-game lead in the loss column over Toronto. Now, Toronto has the tiebreaker over Atlanta because they swept that season series. So with that, the Raptors, if they win out, and their remaining schedule is Miami, the Knicks, and Brooklyn. That is a schedule that says, okay, they could win out now, but because the Knicks are there, that is something that if they win out, that means a loss for the Knicks. That means what do the Cavs do? Because the Cavs, if they beat Atlanta a couple of times here, they would then probably go 3-0 because Washington's going to do everything to lose on Sunday. So this could be a situation where the Cavs kind of have to choose wanting to get Toronto up to fifth or potentially get up to third themselves. So I think this is something I need to flesh out a little bit more, but I just think it's worth keeping in mind. And Philly lost to San Antonio. They still have one more difficult game. I don't remember who it's against remaining, but I think it's going to be really tough for Philly to get up to fifth now. Like if the Cavs finish in fourth, it's either going to be Atlanta or Toronto. And there's a very, very strong chance that it would be the Atlanta Hawks in the first round against the Cavaliers if they stick in fourth, but we will have plenty of time tomorrow to talk about that. Now, this was a milestone for the Cavs, their 50th win of the season. You might say, well, that's not a big deal. We expected that to be the case. I think we need to have a little bit of perspective on this night. So we'll do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. But first, today's show is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, well, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. Puts the advantage back where it belongs, with you, the fan. You can pull up the Game Time app, pick an upcoming NBA game, like the one on Wednesday night when the Cavaliers take on the Atlanta Hawks in Cleveland at Rocket Arena, and you can have your tickets locked in within minutes. You'll see the all-in price up front, so there are no surprise fees at checkout. Plus, you will also be able to see the view from your seat, right? If you're going to a game, whether it's basketball, baseball, another sport, comedy show, concert, any of those things, you want to know, what is my view of the action going to be, right? What's center court look like? What does home plate look like? What does the stage look like? Inside the Game Time app, you can click on your seat and it'll show you exactly what your view is going to be. One of the best features that they've got going on. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off that first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. Thank you again for making this edition of Locked On Cavs your first watch or your first listen. The best way you can help grow this show is if you subscribe, please, wherever you are listening. I would very much appreciate it. And this win on Monday night for the Cleveland Cavaliers was win number 50 of this season. And you might think to yourself, what's the big deal? And that's fair. This is a team that had a preseason over-under on FanDuel, I believe, at 56.5. They will not be coming anywhere close to that. And they have, by all intents and, they have underachieved, right? By every measure, this has been a team that has underachieved what their preseason expectations were. We thought that, and the East still is wide open. They still could win the East, and I would not be surprised. They still could get to the finals, or they could lose in the second round. And I think all those things were still on the table at the start of the season. But I also think if you look at what this Cavs team was at the start of the season and think about what they've gone through, over the last several months to where they have had 18 different guys on standard contracts, which is not some crazy number. But Thomas Bryant missing this game on Monday with a calf strain was the 17th guy on a standard contract to miss time this year because of injuries. The Cavs have had 0 games, exactly 0 games, in which they have had their full roster available. Furthermore, they've had 0 games where they've had their full rotation available. So it's not as if, they've got all of the rotation players and they're missing Craig Porter Jr. because of the groin injury or Tyrese Proctor because of the quad injury. And you think, okay, well, those guys might not factor in anyways. No, they've not had even situations like that. They have been constantly beat up throughout the season. On Monday night against Memphis, the Cavs started their 39th different starting lineup of the year. The most that I could find in a single season for the Cavs in terms of different starting lineups, unique starting lineups throughout a season, is 32. They had 32 different starting lineups in the 2019 season, and we all know how that went. They had more starting lineups than wins. So for this Cavs team to have 39 different starting lineups, and I would venture to guess that they're going to have more than 39 different starting lineups by the time that this regular season is all said and done on Sunday evening against the Washington Wizards. So they'll probably top 40 with that number. So the fact that they have had so little continuity, so many guys in and out of the lineup, and so many different bouts of adversity, some self-inflicted, some not self-inflicted. The fact that all of that stuff has been true and they found a way to 50 wins, I think is impressive. And I think they do deserve credit. I'm not saying that we should be throwing them a parade. I'm not saying that Kenny Atkinson is the greatest coach in the world because he was able to navigate this. But I am saying that they deserve credit for doing so. Because if you think about this, it kind of has been a season from hell for the Cavs. Basically, everything that went well for them last regular season has not gone well for them this postseason. They've not shot the ball as well. They've not been as good defensively. They have been so far away from the team they were last year in terms of health. And I think it would have been easy, especially when you think back to the end of December, when the Cavs on December 27th go into Houston after they lose a heartbreaker on Christmas Day to the Knicks. They go into Houston and they get throttled and they fall to 17-16 on the season. They respond with at that point, their most impressive win. They go into San Antonio and win, and they avoid falling to 500 basically at the turn of the calendar. And then they beat the Suns, which was another very impressive win a couple of days later back at home. But that was sort of a turning point. And since then, the Cavs have been one of the best teams in basketball. It hasn't always felt like it, but I think it would have been really easy for them to fold at that point. And again, I'm not saying that we should throw them a parade. I'm not saying that this is the greatest achievement in this era of Cavs basketball, because none of those things are true. What I am saying is that while this season is always one that was going to be judged on what happens in late April and May and maybe even into June, and that still is the case, I do think that there's a time and a place to appreciate what has been a difficult, but in some ways impressive regular season. Now, we are not going to know for a little bit whether or not the Cavs are better because of this or not. We'll find out that in the coming weeks here. But I do think just on Tuesday, as we think about what this week could look like and we wait to see how the Cavs are going to approach things, I think it's okay at this point to take a deep breath and say, you know what? Season has not gone the way anybody planned. It's not gone the way the Cavs planned. It's not gone the way you or I predicted. It's not gone the way anybody thought it would for the Cavs. But they found a way to get to 50 wins. And I think there's something to be said for that. I think it is impressive when you think about all the things that have gone wrong. Doesn't mean that this year's a success. It doesn't. But I do think that you can look at it and say, you know what? I think they deserve credit for finding a way to get to 50. It hasn't been what we thought it would be, but it could have been a lot worse than what it's been. And I think that's an important thing to remember as we very quickly now approach the postseason. So like I said, the Cavs are not in action on Tuesday. They are back on the court on Wednesdays. They take on the Atlanta Hawks. I will have you covered before that game because I will be talking about what the Cavs should do this upcoming week. They've got 3 games left. We'll talk about all the scenarios, all the paths, all the way they could go over the next several days before the end of the regular season finally, mercifully arrives on Sunday against the Washington Wizards. So as we get out of here, please do me a favor. If you could hit the thumbs up button on YouTube and click that notification bell if you've not done so yet, I would greatly appreciate it. And if you can hit the subscribe button, whether it's on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else that you might be listening to Locked On Cavs, that would be awesome. That's the best way to help grow the show. And I will be back tomorrow talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.